Did you open your Ford hood looking for a transmission dipstick? Let me break some bad news to you. They do not have one. If you're wondering how to check your transmission fluid on your Ford vehicle, stick around. Let me show you how it is done. We're only talking about the most recent 10 years of Ford vehicles. 3 different styles here other than the traditional dipstick tube. First up, we have the 10R80 here. You will find this style of transmission dipstick in the F-150s, Expeditions, the Ford Rangers, the Ford Mustangs, the Ford Explorers built after 2020. Pretty much anything that houses a 6R80, a 10R60, or a 10R80 is gonna have a dipstick like this. It's pretty simple how we check it. We're just gonna crank the engine up and we're gonna pull this dipstick out here. You'll see instead of having actual lines on here, we have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We have these numbers on here because they use the same exact dipstick across the 10R60 and the 10R80 platform, so they have different levels for different models and applications. It's kind of a weird thing, but all you have to do to check this is get it hot, crank it up, burn the absolute piss out of yourself on this catalytic converter they like to put right beside it. Basically just gonna stick this down in here like so. Now I don't have the engine running so you can hear me talk, but here's pretty much what it's gonna look like when you bring it out. We're gonna check the level here and refer to our owner's manual to see where that level is supposed to be. Next up here, we have the 10R140, which is on an island all by itself. This thing come out in the year 2020, and pretty much all of the F-250s made from there on out. So this one's pretty simple. You see we got a plug just like we did on the 10R80 on the side of the transmission. It's kind of hard for me to show it to you up here, but I'm gonna take it out. We take this plug out and we got our dipstick. No dipstick. Well, wonder why they did that. On this particular transmission, they got rid of the dipstick altogether. They figured that, I guess, the dipstick was too difficult of a method for you guys at home to figure out. So we added a fuel plug on the driver's side of the vehicle. Ooh, this vehicle does not need the transmission fluid check, but I was trying to demonstrate it for you guys, but unfortunately this is a freaking rust bucket. So come around here, Jake. So you see that? So unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to show you guys how to actually check it. All you have to do is crank the vehicle up, get it warm, pull that plug out, and it's just like checking a rear end. You're just gonna wait for fluid to pour out of the side. Ford tells you to fill it through the same exact hole. I use this other side, but it's a little bit higher than the actual plug on this side. So we squirt fluid in here and wait for it to run out on the other side. Love to show you guys, but unfortunately this thing's a piece of shit, man. This is a 2018 Escape we're checking here on our 3rd type of transmission. This style of transmission fluid plug has been very common over the last 15 years with front-wheel drive transmissions on Ford vehicles. You find it on the Ford Focus, the Ford Escape, the Ford Fusion, and several other different models they've made over the last 15 years. The 6F55 that you'll find in most of the Explorers built before the year 2020 and most of the Ford Flexes are going to have a dipstick up top. It's going to be located somewhere in this area. You'll screw the cap off, pull it out, and you'll have an actual dipstick attached to it. It's super easy to check. You actually check the transmission fluid under the vehicle, but first I'm going to show you where you fill it from when you need to add fluid. So it's kind of hard to see down here. I didn't really want to rip all this stuff out just to show you guys this, but here is the vent on the top of the transmission. You see we have a hose clamp right here. What we would do, we would take this hose clamp off and we would pop this whole rubber vent off, and we would be left with a little hole right there that would allow us to stick a little small funnel in. Some of the different configurations of this will have a thing in the top of it you can slide out. It kind of looks like a cross that slides down it. This is the vent for your transmission, but this is also where Ford wants us to add fluid. So let's find out where we need to check it. So here we are up under this Escape with the engine running. Here's the plug right here. We're gonna go ahead and remove that. Now it is super important that you do this with the engine running, because if you do not get the engine running, the pump is not pumping fluid, so it's gonna come out everywhere. It's also equally as important to get the transmission hot prior to doing this, because if you do not, the fluid has not expanded to where it will be when you're actually driving the car, and the level will not be correct. Fluid's probably going to be at the correct level because this thing doesn't actually have transmission issues. Yep, you see the fluid? Holy shit. Is that motor oil or? Look at that fluid, dude. It doesn't have transmission issues yet, but you can see that it is at the correct level. The condition is awful, but this is how you check the majority of front-wheel drive transmissions on The Fords. You now know how to check every single Ford transmission built within the last 10 years. When and why should you be checking your transmission fluid? 99% of the time when I check transmission fluid, it is not to actually see the level of the fluid. It's usually to see the quality of the fluid. Does it have a heavy clutch material in it? Does it have heavy metallic material in it? I'm usually not checking the level because transmission fluid does not evaporate, right? If it's not on the ground, if it's not outside of the case, it's probably still in there, right? It didn't go anywhere unless it went in the coolant system, which would not be good. Those of you wondering why Ford Motor Company or any car manufacturer, because this is not just Ford Motor Company, this is really across the board in this day and age, why did they actually take transmission dipsticks away? Just to save money. You know, the same reason that any company most of the time does anything is to save money. Removing that transmission dipstick makes it easier for design teams to design the transmission around crazy engines and crazy coolant hose designs. They don't have to worry about running some stick all the way up there just so that you can check it and bring it in and tell me that it looks funnier than it did last week. That's pretty much why car manufacturers have went away with dipsticks. If you think the transmission fluid dipstick removal is a crazy move by car manufacturers, just wait a few more years and your engine oil dipsticks will be gone, I promise you.